And welcome in to the Bobby Carpenter Show, featuring my man on to the right of me, Mr. Anthony Schlegel. I'm going to talk about the upcoming game this Saturday as football season is finally here with the Indiana Hoosiers. Talk a little Marvin Harrison. There's some fan questions. We got a ton of great content that we're going to be able to get into. But it's just finished up. The first weekend, Schlegs, official weekend of football just happened, which is great. Week 0, Saturday, you had USC playing a little bit. You had some Navy. Did you learn and taking on Notre Dame? Did you learn anything? Did you get a chance to watch any of those games?
I got a chance to watch some games. I would say this. I went down to Joe Gorell's Buckeye college kickoff party in Atlanta, Georgia. My wife and I flew up for that. He does a lot of stuff with the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer, and everything raised from the party goes back to the James at Ohio State, which is really cool. But, I'm just sitting there and I'm just watching games. And what I'm learning is, guess what? There's a lot of bad ball and there's some really good ball. And that's, again, everybody wants to think that you're week 12 ready. You don't need to be. You need to be week 1 ready. And so, we saw early on in the Notre Dame game, Sam missed a couple of throws that should have been a touchdown because he didn't read it and deliver it fast enough. Guess what? That's fine. Who cares? They had a holding penalty. Guess what? Who cares? Only one they had all game. There's some really good things that you could take away from all these games. And then there's some things that you got to go back and, watching San Diego State play and these other teams. Like there's a lot of work to be done. And it always goes back to me. If you're a coach, whether it's Pop Warner, like you and I coach, Bob, or junior high or high school, doesn't matter. College football, the fundamentals are key. And they're going to watch all these films. They're going to go back to next week and they're going to get back on those fundamentals before installing. What'd you take away?
Well, I thought, the Notre Dame offense, it looks significantly different and improved with Sam Hartman at the reins. And I think people were wondering, would he travel outside of that slow read that they used to run at Wake Forest, kind of a unique style of offense? And I thought he looked as advertised, like you said early on, maybe not quite as clean as you would have liked, but that's okay because they were playing Navy. They were significantly better than them. You saw obviously that pull away and separation, but I think you saw a Notre Dame team that is going to be more aggressive down the field than they potentially were last season. They didn't really have those outside threats. And I don't know if their wide receiving core is still the best you're going to find, but I will say it's pretty exciting if you're a Notre Dame fan to be able to see what they're able to do with Hartman back there. I feel like your offense is more explosive because if you're going to play Ohio State, in a handful of weeks, about a month, like you're going to need to score some points. I don't care how good your defense is. You're going to have to find a way to come up with some points. It can't all be on the ground. So pretty exciting what they're able to do there. And then, USC, I thought they looked as advertised. I mean, you're playing a group of 5 team just like, Notre Dame was with Navy. It's, not obviously the caliber of competition that you're going to be seeing on a week in and week out basis, but Caleb Williams and the whole crew, like they looked as advertised as well. It was a little tight in the first half, but then they pull away as you would expect them to in the second half. So fun getting a little football the way this past weekend. And now we get to stare ahead at what's going to be a pretty nice, robust slate. And Ohio State, they're going to be taking on Indiana. And that is where we're going to go as we take a look at our headlines.
We gonna be happily ever after. That's what I had.
All right, Schlegs, we've got ourselves opening weekend matchup in the conference. A little bit unique. They did this, I think, 2017. They went to Indiana, opened up on Thursday night. They're able to do this. So it's not something that happens very often. They beat the Hoosiers 56-14 last season. For a long time while Kevin Wilson was there, these games were close, and Indiana could put up some points. Since Kevin Wilson left and ultimately came to Ohio State, you feel like that offense has slowly started to slip. And Tom Allen, who was brought in, who was so good on defense, early on, was able to ramp it up. Their defenses, I think, has kind of suffered a little bit due to the fact that they've been on the field so much. So I know that Ohio State fans probably look at this, maybe it's, same old Indiana, and you know what? It's been a long time. since they've lost, I think going back to 87 and 88. Earl Bruce referred to them as Dark Day 1 and Dark Day 2 in Ohio State history.
Yep.
But your feelings on opening up with a team that you see each and every year within the conference?
Well, yeah, so 2021, they played Minnesota on the road and opening up conference games, and we'll get into that to a bit, Bob. But, Indiana, 4-8, 2022. Tom Allen, he's 30-40 at Indiana. To me, they're Indiana, and it's not really about what Indiana does, in my honest opinion. This is all about Ohio State, and there's a lot of questions right now, and what I want to see from Ohio State, and I really don't care. Is it Kyle McCord? He's more of the accurate passer. Is it Devin Brown? He can do a little bit more with his legs, and that puts pressure on defenses when you have a new guy coming in. So I want to see that. I want to see how that plays out, who takes control, who can score in the red zone, who can be the leader. I want to see him in a 2-minute situation. These would be all great things that we would like, but what happens? How's the offensive line look? So, you got 3 dudes that left last year that are absolute studs: Paris Johnson, DeJuan Jones, and Luke Whipple. They're gone. You got a new offensive line coming in, all right? You have the D-line. They were 35th in the year in sacks last year. Or they had 34 sacks last year. Not good enough for this type of defensive line. Our secondary, come on, man, 661 yards the last 2 games of the season. So it's not about Indiana opening up a season like this and a 27-game win streak that we've had opening up a season. It's all about where the Buckeyes going to show, when they go to Bloomington. And to me, guess what, man? Set it off, right? Little Boosie. That's what I want to see. I want to see Ohio State set it off, Bob.
Little Boosie. I love it.
Hey, yes, man.
Hey, definitely need to make an appearance here, Little Boosie. I'm glad we got that in. So you can put that on your bingo card if you had that there. That may help connect the dots for you. I think the big question, it's always paramount, especially when you're playing a team where there's going to be a decided talent advantage, is, what do you need to see out of the Buckeyes in week 1 to feel good? And for me, I guess, like you touched on it, you want to see, obviously, the defensive line take control. Like, specifically, can Mike Hall, how much is he going to be able to play? How healthy will he be this year? Last year, he was a little beat up, incredibly dominant when he was in. Can JT Tuimoloau take that next step? The guy we saw at Penn State, we don't need to see Clark Kent or Superman every week, but you've got to be able to go out and make those big impactful plays. He was close last year, but you like to be able to see some of that. Same with Sawyer on the other side, Jack being able to start making some of those big impactful plays. And I think that's what people want to see. And then the big question is always going to be for this defense. It's going to be the big plays. And I don't think you're giving up big plays against Indiana simply due to the fact that there's going to be a talent gap. Like, their receivers aren't skilled enough to get on top of Ohio State's defensive backs. At least they shouldn't be. If they are, and that does happen, then there's going to be an issue. And so that's something that you've obviously got to take into account. But I don't think that that's something that's going to be very prevalent. And so I don't know if you can really make me feel good. I know you could make me feel bad if you give up those big plays and you miss tackles. But I don't see, like, Eichenberg and Chambers, Tommy Steele, they're not going to be missing tackles. In the secondary, Schlegs, I think, is taking a big step up. What I really like to see, and we'll get your thoughts on this, is how are they going to use Sonny Styles? I think that's one of the big questions. Is this guy is a very, very unique athlete. One that you don't really see very often, who has the size of a linebacker and the speed and athleticism, skill of a safety. And so how does he fit in? How does he ultimately look? And how does Jim Knowles deploy him? Because he talked about, I should have got some of these guys in here last year. I didn't. And now you're going to get them in. How do you rotate those guys? What positions are you putting them in?
Well, I'm happy that you brought that up, because he is a unicorn, right? He's long and thick. Okay. And so, like, somebody that can add a lot of value. My thing is this, where we use Dante Whitner the exact same way, but Dante obviously didn't have his stats, right? As far as his physical nature, but Dante was a hitter. We played a 4-3 defense, but with 2 linebackers and you being a third linebacker as a defensive end in a 5 technique. And Dante played a really aggressive nickel that they would probably call their bandit or whatever.
Yeah.
Are they going to do that because you now are in a sub package, but you can still play your base defense in essence, because he's so physical in that situation?
You're telling me he could be the ace of base? Is that what you're talking about?
I love it. Potentially.
I like it.
And, so I think you will see this in this game, a little bit of Jim Knowles' identity of 2023 Ohio State defense.
Ooh.
I sure want to see it because we hear, again, I don't like hearing how we have all
Maybe
this talent.
transform his identity from like last year to this year.
Well,
Like, how do you think that identity is going to be able to transition from 2022 to 2023? What are we looking at?
Pretty easy. Don't get your ass kicked 661 yards in the last 2 games. Now, it doesn't matter what happens in Bloomington week 1. Okay. It's what is it going to look like throughout the rest of the season, but we can get a glimpse as to how he's going to utilize it. My thing is, I think Ohio State defensive backs have underperformed. I think this year they should take a big step forward because, again, you have the DB coaches. They were new last year with Jim Knowles coming in. They have some more continuity year 2.
Yep.
How are you going to use these guys while also being able to add value from your defensive line? Your linebackers are there. And they got some really good linebackers that are waiting in the wing that can add value. So I want to see how that all takes place. But more importantly, to me, that even this, Bob, is our offensive line. I want to see guys. I thought last year we had too many times we had people leaning on people. Leaning.
Yeah.
Offensive linemen don't lean. Okay, you are an earth mover. I want to see people like a diesel move people. Okay, dude movers. That's what I want to see. That's a mentality. That's a little Boosie. Okay,
right. I love it.
So that's what I want to see week 1, and I'll feel really good. If I don't see stuff like that, I'll get on here next week and I will just rip them up. There you go,
right.
Proof David Copperfield.
We got 2 more things we need to get to here before we got to hit a break. New QB this season, whoever's going to be, McCord or Brown, and I think both of those guys are going to play, and we'll get into that here. Ryan's alluded to that fact. But would you rather face maybe more of a group of 5? Like, I know you love cupcakes, like, so would you rather open up the season with a cupcake? And is Indiana, are they a cupcake? And if so, maybe what flavor?
Okay, what flavor? They're the kind that they're probably like the universal. They're probably like the vanilla cupcake. There's some cupcakes that are like so freaking good, right? It might be the chocolate on chocolate. I don't like sprinkles, but it might be that. It's whatever you're fancy. You have your own pecking order of cupcakes. I would say this. I like playing a better opponent than a really terrible like group of 5 opponent. Because why? Especially in this. Okay.
Yeah.
Especially in this situation, because this is a fact, right? You can, what is it called? You can plan the picnic, but you can't predict the weather. Okay. You know who said that? Outcast. But here's the deal. I want to see live bullets with these 2 quarterbacks because they've been around our guys. I want to see our offensive line actually block people as opposed to practice when our D-line's just chewing them up. Like, I want to see it real bullets in a game situation live against a decent team with coaches that get paid lots of money to coach their teams to go out there and play football. I want to see that. So that's why I like playing these first. What about you? What do you think?
Oh, because Indiana's kind of that sweet spot, I think, where they're a team that you should beat. You're more talented than, but they are a Big Ten opponent, and it's not just straight roll your helmet out there and win the game. So I do like this kind of hybrid right there with everything. Indiana, they're also going to have to kind of plan for 2 quarterbacks. Now, Devin and Kyle aren't crazy different, so I don't think that's going to be that big of an issue going back and forth between those guys. But that is going to be something that you can argue might be advantageous for Ohio State. Now, we'll see how Ryan plays him, and we'll get into all of that. But that is something that, from a defensive standpoint, even if the guys are similar and the offense is going to be pretty similar with how they choose to deploy those guys. And I think that there'll be more Q runs this season as well. So I think that's going to be something that we're going to see. And a lot of people clamored for that last season. Everybody, when Urban was here, they said, we need quarterbacks that can throw. And then all of a sudden you have a quarterback that can throw. It's like, why don't they run more? We need to run the QB, even though they lamented JT doing that. Since we had an outcast drop already, I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. We're out of time on this. We're going to come back. We're going to talk a little Notre Dame football. Bobby Carpenter Show with my man Anthony Schlegel on the Big Play Network.
We're going to be happily ever after. That's what I had.
All right, so we talked a little bit of Notre Dame early on. Getting into it, Notre Dame beat Navy 42-3, season opener.
Yes.
Sam Hartman transfers in from Wake. Really nice day, 4 touchdowns, over 250 yards passing, clean slate with the interceptions. Last year, I mean, this guy was phenomenal. Over 77 touchdowns last year, 26 interceptions over the last 2 seasons with Wake.
Yep.
Done a really good job. Does adding him into the Notre Dame mix, into their stew, Schlegs, do you think that makes them a legitimate national title contender?
Yes.
Mix
Yes.
a lot?
I'm mixing it up. And here's why.
So kick them nasty
always,
thoughts.
Notre Dame's always, I wouldn't say always, but they've been close. You look at Sam Hartman, 2021, they were 11-3.
Yeah.
Ranked 15th in the country at the end of the season. They had some games. 2022, they're 8-5. Still, they're going to bowl game. It's Wake, and then they're down there in Salem, North Carolina, so he can do some things. And we saw in the game, he's a veteran guy. They have a really talented older linebacking core. James Laurinaitis absolutely loved those guys.
Yeah.
Hard to leave him when he came to Ohio State because of relationships that he has with them. I would say probably their offensive line has more continuity. And at this moment, right now, before we play Indiana, they're better than us.
Yep.
As far as offensive line play. So they have the edge there. They have a veteran quarterback. We don't know who our quarterback is, right? And again, you look at
It's a
their
beautiful
schedule,
mystery, Schlegs. I mean, that's something Ryan can kind of hold it back and let it pop out when the time is right. So that'll be interesting to see. So we're trying to figure that out. Hartman's played a lot, so you do like that with everything and what they're doing. So yeah, I think there is a lot of positive about Notre Dame this year. It was interesting last year, Schlegs. Marcus talked a lot, national championship title. You're opening with Ohio State and all this hype, and you always wonder, like, is a little bit of the luster worn off? You lose to Ohio State 21-10. It's good game, very close. You lose to Marshall then the next week. Lost to Stanford that year.
Terrible.
They beat Clemson. I mean, it's some nice wins, but it's just, you're trying to manage expectations. I think that's the hardest thing for most coaches to do, especially early on, is get caught up in the hype, and he's trying to sell his program, and they got out a little bit ahead. And so it was kind of interesting how they meandered through that year. This year, I think he's tempering back those expectations, and you're talking about them being developmental and just wanting to get better and improving, sounding a lot more Jim Tressel-esque than maybe he did in the past. And so Ohio State's traveling to South Bend. They're going to be traveling to Ann Arbor the last game of the season.
Yep.
Outside of Michigan this year, heading to Ann Arbor, do you think this is going to be the toughest game for the Bucks?
That's a great question, Bob. I think it's going to be a really tough game. Just watching that Notre Dame game, I mean, I think they don't have the team speed that we have. It's facts. They have really big wide receivers.
Yeah.
They run the football well. They got a really good offensive line. They got a veteran quarterback. I think they played sound defense, but they just played Navy. Okay. And Navy's coming off their first coach in like the last 15 years. They got a new guy there. So, right. So I don't know really where they are as far as Notre Dame, but I think it's going to be a great game out South Bend. You look at Ohio State's schedule. I mean, the only ones that really matter to me, that jump off the screen, I think Penn State's going to be really, really good. And then you have Wisconsin with Fick being there. Again, new defensive scheme, new offensive scheme, completely different. How does the personnel that they have fit into what he wants to do in year one, and can they be competitive? Because it's at Wisconsin. Penn State's at home. But I think Penn State, though, Bob, is the one. What do you think?
You circle that up, and I'm probably with you. Going to Notre Dame, it sounds tough. We'll see what that fan breakdown looks like. Ohio State does a great job of invading opposing stadiums.
Yes.
You saw what Georgia was able to do at Notre Dame, prior when they went up there. Now, granted, Georgia had never played there, so it's a bigger deal. But Ohio State, we've played Notre Dame Schlegs. We played them in the bowl. We've played them a couple of times in bowl games.
Yes.
But this is the first time since 95, 96 where we had home and homes with them. So it'll be the first time, I believe, since 96, if I'm not mistaken, that we went up there. So this is a chance. I mean, storied rivalry, hasn't really played a lot, but two big-time programs that proximity-wise recruit a lot of the same kids out of the Midwest. Obviously the Catholic contingent in Ohio, you look at Cleveland, you look at Cincinnati, even some of the schools in Central Ohio. So there's a lot of overlap. So I think there'll be a lot of fans. That's why I don't think it's going to be a crazy hostile environment. Penn State is that crazy hostile environment, but it's at home this year.
Yes.
And the big difference for them, much like Notre Dame, Drew Aller, their young quarterback out of Cleveland, we'll see. I think he's from Medina, if I'm not mistaken. Really talented player. And I'm curious to watch his development through the season, because that's the game that I have circled. It's always right around Halloween. It's the 21st this year.
Yes.
At home, noon game. And we'll see if he's able to make those big jumps in improvement to where that will be the toughest game. Because if he doesn't improve, I would probably lean to Notre Dame. But I think he's a big dude. He reminds me a lot of Josh Allen with Buffalo.
Yes. Yep.
And obviously, he's coming to Columbus. He's an Ohio kid. That'll be a huge game for him. There's a lot of Ohio guys on Penn State. And so we'll kind of see how that evolves and how that develops as the season goes. So I think I'm with you. That could be the toughest game that we'll have to circle up as we look at this schedule and look at this slate as we kind of preview the whole season.
Yeah, and you're gonna see this, why Penn State will be that matchup. Again, it's at home, but they can run the football. They have Singleton, they have Allen, if I'm not mistaken, freshman. I mean, they got some good running backs, man. And they got one of their best offensive line. A lot of guys are back. And again, that has been a little bit of Ohio State's Achilles heel, like stopping the run on a consistent basis with not giving up the big play. And I think that playing Notre Dame, Marcus is going to do the exact same thing that he did last year in the shoe at home. Control it. He has the pieces to do that. Play Trussell ball, right? Limit the opportunities, the possessions for the Ohio State offense. And then honestly, if I'm Indiana, I'm Ohio State, I'm affecting the quarterback as much as I possibly can. I'm blitzing, I'm disguising, and I want to affect that dude because he's the one with the ball in his hands every single time, and you don't know who that cat is. So affect him. That's going to be it. But Penn State is going to be a good one.
Yeah, it should be. Do you think who has a more talented roster, you think, in your mind? I know Penn State's usually recruits really well.
Really well.
Do you think they're more talented than Notre Dame?
I think that they're younger than Notre Dame. I think that it doesn't necessarily – the talent does matter, but it's the leadership of Notre Dame, the older guys at the right positions, I think matters the most. And, I mean, I even saw Baptiste, who was at Ohio State, who transferred over there. Like, he had a couple really good plays in that game. I think they're older and more mature. And you go look at when we won the national championship in 2002, older veteran guys. Even that year when we went undefeated and didn't get to go to a bowl game, not really talented. I'm telling you right now, not really talented. Probably one of Urban Meyer's best coaching jobs of all time. We were 6-7 in 2011, almost the exact same roster. We're 12-0. Not as much talent as it was when we won the championship in 2014. So it's not necessarily about talent, it's about how you play as a team. And I think that as a team, veterans, Notre Dame's probably there because of the quarterback position.
So you were talking about the quarterbacks and blitzing, and Tom Allen loves to bring pressure.
Yep.
Young guys. I mean, young offensive line too. New center, two new tackles. The center and the quarterback, they're the ones who usually set the protection up front, try to figure it out. You don't like typically replacing those guys in the same season.
Right. Great point.
Do you think we'll see? I mean, I'm anticipating Blitzfest. I mean, I think that's if you want to try to beat Ohio State and you're Indiana, and most schools, you can't just sit back and let them attack you. You have to try to dictate tempo and dictate the terms of how you're playing. You think there'll be a lot of blitzing week one from the Hoosiers?
I think that's the only way they compete in this game is try to create turnovers, trying to affect the quarterback. And the way that you do that is blitz them. And again, if they can't pick it up, and it might be a run blitz because they got to get, some feel and some timing and maybe some protection and try just to move the chains. Maybe you're going to blitz them in the run. Are they going to be able to pick it up? I mean, you're going to have to dial up some things, and your guys are going to have to execute on defense. And if they can do that, it's going to be a really close, compelling game. If they can't, it's going to be, 45-17, something like that.
Yeah, it's it'll definitely be very interesting.
Yep.
We'll see how that goes, and I think you'll be able to draw some inferences for how the season will go from Indiana. I don't know if you're going to be able to predict the whole season because, let's be honest, you've got Notre Dame, you've got Penn State, you've got Michigan. Outside of that, you do have to travel to Wisconsin. I mean, this is a fairly difficult schedule, but early on, first 3 weeks, probably won't learn a ton. Ohio State is loaded. They've got, in my opinion, the best receiver in the country. what are his chances to win the Heisman? We'll get into that as we talk about it next. It's the Bobby Carpenter Show with my man Anthony Schlegel on the Big Play Network.
We gonna be happily ever after. That's what I had.
All right, so we're back. Marvin Harrison Jr. Schlegs.
Yes.
Everybody knows. I mean, I think you could probably make a very compelling argument that he is the best player in college football. Talked to some scouts when they came through for pro day, and they're watching him run routes for CJ. And I'm not talking to these guys about their grading. You know, where do you rank him? You know, who do you put him against? Well, he's obviously the best receiver. One guy goes, I've given him my top grade of any player that I've could ever give. Like, because he's about as perfect of a player relative to his position that you can have.
Yeah.
I mean, he checks all the boxes. I mean, obviously on-field play is tremendous. You know, he's big, he's fast, you know, he's agile, he moves, he high points the ball well. He makes the routine plays look routine. He makes the elite plays look routine. Like, he doesn't take plays off. He's a great teammate. He's a great human being. He works hard in the weight room. He's been pretty healthy throughout his career. Like, he's got a Hall of Fame dad. I mean, every single box, like, there's nothing else you can check about the pedigree and production of Marvin Harrison Jr. And so with that, it's like, could this guy win a Heisman? We watched Devonta Smith win one a couple years ago.
Yes.
Obviously, the great game, you know, against Ohio State, and with what he's honestly able to do, very, very talented player. But it's the first time that we've seen a wide receiver win it, and you know, and even really a non-quarterback. You know, you occasionally have some running backs in there that can slide in, but it's just such a quarterback-heavy award.
Yes.
You know, Caleb Williams won it last year. No one has won it twice since Archie back in the 70s. It's been almost 50 years. I don't know if anyone will ever win it twice again. I don't think the voters lean into that because they compare you basically against your former self. And so unless, you know, USC runs the table, Caleb is great, and they win a national championship, I think it'll be, and the national championship would be after, but he would have to be nearly flawless this season for him to win it. And so does that open up a spot for Marvin Harrison Jr.? I think he's 20-1 at a couple sportsbook I saw. And, you know, so he's longer odds, but could he put up the numbers? He's going to have the games to potentially be able to do it in.
Yeah. The problem right now, the biggest question is who's going to be the quarterback throwing him the football, and can the offensive line protect the quarterback long enough to throw him the football? Because let's face it, I mean, he is the best. There's another rap song.
You see the Top Gun Maverick?
It's amazing. Like I got all these, you know, all these like rap songs in my deal because I was mowing my yard and I put on like a little playlist from just like 2014 because I ran the radio in, you know, on game days, and we had I call it it's an Oreo mix.
DJ Schlegs?
DJ Schlegs. But I mean, again, there's levels, right? There's Dreams and Nightmares on there. And that song in particular kind of actually is Marvin Harrison Jr. It kind of starts out slow. It's like a minute, 10 seconds long. Okay. And then I had to time this up, and I played at a certain time because then when he really started going off, like the dude's got juice, man. But it had to be close enough time to when then Urban would talk, you know, because then he would bring them up after it ended because they were all rapping it in the locker room. And then he would speak and then they'd go, right? So you had to time it up. But that's really him. Like, he's quiet. He's unassuming. He's an absolute grinder. But then you put on the tape, you put him on the field, and he's going to freaking wreck you. And that's what I love about it. I think that's what everybody loves about him. He's just there to handle his business, perfect his craft, and freaking attack and dominate you every single Saturday. He is the best. Could he do it again? The question is, who's going to throw him the rock? Can the offensive line do what they got to do to give the guys protection? And is he going to get enough opportunities? Because let's also face it, Ohio State is loaded. Mark Pantoni, staff, has been doing a great job of getting all these recruits. So one, you have to develop them. Two, you got to give them the ball. Well, there's only one football. It's unfortunate, but Emeka Mbuka, Fleming, I mean, Carnell Tate, Marvin Harrison Jr. is talking about this cat. We haven't even seen him play.
Yeah.
A real game. And he's like, he's better than I was at this point. So you got him. Then you got the running back room. You got Stover. the tight end, like it's crazy talk, and there's still only one ball. I don't think he will put up the numbers that a Devontae Smith did. But if he does it consistently on the way that he has done it, because he should have won a Biletnikoff last year.
That was a sham. I mean, I don't know how.
It's terrible.
He didn't win. He should have been a back-to-back Biletnikoff winner. Like, we're not even talking about him winning that. We're talking about the Heisman Trophy.
Exactly.
I think it's a foregone conclusion that if he is healthy this year, he'll win the Biletnikoff. It's just a function, like you mentioned, Schlegs. There's a lot of mouths to feed, and closed mouths don't get fed on this boulevard. So I know he'll be open and ready to eat, but there's a lot of other guys that are going to be ready to eat as well. So
true.
Can he get the ball? And also, too, like, Hart's going to be rolling a lot of guys through. Is he going to play enough even in some games where, you know what, it's middle of the third quarter, big dog's good. Like, we don't need him out there late in the game that's already been decided. So those are some of the questions that you have to ask. And then what's ironic is on one of the places I went, I saw the odds. Kyle McCord has the same odds to win the Heisman as Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah. I think that's under the assumption that he's going to get the starting nod. Right. Maybe Devin Brown's in there, but some of the other guys you're looking at, Caleb Williams, you got Jaden Daniels of LSU. He's 9-1. Quinn Ewers, interestingly enough, is at 11-1. Michael Penix Jr., 12-1 out of Washington.
I know.
Since we're talking about Indiana, I mean, he was obviously Hoosiers quarterback for a long time. He's really good. And I would tell anyone, like, that's someone at 12-1, that's worth a flyer because that dude's talented. He's going to have a lot of opportunities. He threw the ball last year for almost 4,600 yards. I always say 5,000. I just round up. But very, very talented. Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy, Drake May. And then you start getting into Carson Beck, Kyle McCord, Marvin Harrison Jr. Interestingly enough, Drew Aller, 25-1, Penn State's quarterback. So he's also coming in there. So there's obviously massive expectations for him. Of those guys that I throw anyone out there, Blake Corum in the mix too. You have a favorite for the Heisman Trophy? My dark horse is Michael Penix Jr. Anyone that you love, Schlegs, that stands out?
Nope. I don't love anybody because I don't love, thinking about awards before the season starts. And the reason Caleb Williams got it is because nobody took it. Yeah. It kind of fell on him. And I didn't like that. I don't think he's going to be another year back to back. I think there's a lot of really good guys. I mean, Jaden Daniels, if LSU plays great defense and he can kind of replicate what Joe Burrow does, and they're really good and they win the SEC, he will be the Heisman Trophy. Like, that's because they didn't come out of nowhere, but they beat the best, right? They had to have beaten Georgia. They've already beat Alabama.
So Ric Flair? It's a Ric Flair situation.
I mean, oh my gosh, to be the man, you got to beat the man, right? Okay. Woo! I am in Jacksonville. Okay, so that being said, he could definitely be one. I think this year I want to see somebody take it, and if it doesn't, then that's where I think it could fall to a Marvin Harrison Jr. because he just was so good in those games. People are going to like, all right, he did 1,400 yards. Maybe let's say he has a little bit more production this year, but he did it, and he also didn't play in the end of the third quarter because there also is a risk-reward analysis that has to go on. Like, when you guys got to think about this, it's not about awards for the coaches when they're thinking about their wins. They're thinking about the longevity, the long game. Like, how do we play versus Michigan? I want a healthy team. Like, and honestly, from what I've heard is I haven't heard a lot. So I think we're probably pretty good coming out of camp. That's why I don't like these awards. Who cares? Win the game, show up. Let's go set it off, Buckeyes.
Yeah, that's it's pretty interesting. You say that, in awards, they're always secondary. The thing Marvin, I think, needs to have, if he wants to have a chance, is he has to have those highlight plays. And so every Saturday, he's got to be on the desk because, hey, look what Marvin did in the first quarter, just dunking on a dude, catching, man. Toe drag swag. He needs to have 2 or 3 catches every week. Yeah, they get you excited, Schlegs. They take you from 6 to midnight in a hurry. And with that, we're going to get some of our questions from our listeners because that's always the best. What do you want to know? Let's answer them. My man Schlegs and I will do that next. It's the Bobby Carpenter Show, featuring my man Schlegweiser on the Big Play Network.
We're going to be happily ever after. That's what I had.
All right. It's our favorite segment that we're going to do every week because we can talk for all the football we want. But we want to answer your questions. We want to know what you would like to have answered and how we can hopefully give you a little inside information to see what happens. And their first question comes from Mike Kallenberg on Twitter. He said,
See you, Mike?
Yeah, that's a good question. You can each go back and replay one game. Woo. Which one, Schlegs, and why?
All right. So you want me to go first here, Bob? I got it.
Yeah,
so
I just asked you the question.
Yep, you did. That's what you do because you're the host. All right. So if I go back and replay one game, can I have one game that morphs into two?
Sure.
I'm going to do it. Okay, good. 2005 Texas game. Now, here's the deal. You got to call your own number. Like I missed a sack in that game on Vince Young. I mean, I think back to that game. We gave our offense the ball 3 times inside their 25, and we got 3 points from it. We get beat 25-21, I think, Bob. I mean, damn it, right? And I really think we win that game. We win the national championship. There were some different things transpiring. But then that morphed into the Penn State game at Penn State, which is probably one of my most favorite games to play in because it was the first whiteout. And defensively, we beat the crap out of them. They had 171. I mean, we did put the tape. We dominated, but we got beat 17-10. And it's like one of those things where I think if we beat Texas, we just find a way to win that game.
Yeah.
And that changes the season because they were ranked 3rd at the end of the year. We were ranked 4th. And so that's why they morphed together because I think if you win the first one, you find a way to win the second one, Bob. What are yours?
Like a real Morpheus situation there, Schlegs. I really like that. I agree with both of those. It's crazy. I remember so much from the Texas game. That Penn State game, I feel like I need to block out just because we played so well defensively and just couldn't do anything on offense and, only scored on, gave up that short field touchdown. So that was tough.
Yeah.
The game that I would look at, and you were on the team.
Oh my gosh. I know what you're going to say.
And, it could have, it probably could have been back-to-back national championships. And you go look at that 2003 Michigan game.
Yep.
And, there was a lot of great players on that defense. Chris Perry had a heck of a day, played really, really well. And so it was disappointing, obviously, when you let him have like 150 yards rushing. You win that game, you're going back to the national championship, man. And so despite everything that happened in the offseason, despite the stuff that happened with Maurice and, we had injuries, this and that, there was a lot of other stuff that was going on. We were still right there, man. We lost to Wisconsin earlier, but everything was right in front of us. We win that game. We go to number 1 or 2 in the BCS, and we go play for a second straight national title. And that's how hard it is to win national championships, man. You can be right there on the cusp, on the precipice of it, and not get it done. It's a game that I didn't play particularly well in. And it was just a weird feeling. Like I went in there, and it wasn't that we were overconfident or like cocky, but I think we expected to win that game. Yeah. And that's good. You do want to be confident and have the expectation to win, but I think we expected to win it, but didn't expect it to be as hard as it would have been. And Michigan came out, they had lost in 0-1 up there for the first time since 87 with Earl Bruce. The first time they had lost at Ohio State since 98, only been a couple years, in 02. But it had been the first back-to-back losses in a long time for them, and they were not about to go down John Navarre and that crew on a three-peat. So they came out and they kicked our butt. And I look back at that, I'm like, man, if we win that game, chance to win back-to-back national titles, like what does that do? Like how does that change the trajectory? You're back at home in Columbus, just slugging down some beers, watching that game, throwing them at the TV, getting so mad because we couldn't stop the run. And oh boy, their fullback filed down his face mask and like AJ's arms like bleeding. He had that rubber sleeve on. Oh, dude, there's chunks out of his. You can still see the scar on his forearm. That one was really deep. And Bob and Doug sprayed that mask on, just like pinched it shut, burned so bad I could see it in his face. And then he put that sleeve over it, and it looked like it was getting hit with a weed whacker. I mean, it was ridiculous. Right. And then they went and checked it, and the ref's like, "Oh, it's fine now." Like, yeah, dude, change helmets, bud. Like, let's get real. How do you think this happened? No one else is like this. He's taking on that stinking fullback lead, that weak lead the whole time.
Yep.
So,
in the bubble.
There's that one, and it was bumpy, and that's one that gets away from you, and you don't necessarily like it. And obviously, they go on, win, had success. We got them back in 04. We got them back up there in 05.
Yep.
So we'll go to our next question here from Nick Scroggins, nscrog9 on Twitter. Schlegs, which position group do you think has the most to prove in 2023?
Bob, that's a
You got to
great
pick
question.
one. You got to pick one. You can't give me a Tim May answer.
I can't give you all. Huh? That's terrible. All right. So here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it's, I'm going to go with the DBs. It's just, again, it goes back to the last 2 games, big plays, 661 yards passing. 2 games is terrible. You're ranked 25th in the country in passing. Who cares? You play like crap versus the last 2. I think it's also on Jim Knowles, and it's also on the defensive back coaches. I mean, you got to start developing dudes, man. I mean, when are the corners going back to DBU, right? When we got Kerry Combs here, and this is just facts. I mean, where's DBU? Where's the hype about these DBs coming out being shut down corners? I think the last one was Denzel Ward. And again, you have talent there. And guess what? Competition breeds excellence. We talk about that all the time. And all we do is hear about our wide receivers. Let's hear about the competition of the DBs actually shutting them down. And if that's not the case, then like, what are we doing? We need to reevaluate that. So I want to see that, like, to me, again, game 1, offensive line, are they leaners or are they dude movers? That's number 1. Number 2, the secondary. And it's not like just absolutely locked down. They didn't give up 100 yards passing. I don't care about that. I care, did they do their job? And I also care about how Jim Knowles is going to use them. Is he going to put them in really bad situations? It's like, hey, we're going to play man. You got to go do this, and it's wide open, and the guy gets beat, and now there's a big play. Or can we be a little bit more conservative because we are so much more talented and keep everything in front and maybe give up a field goal as opposed to last year we gave up 27 touchdowns in the red zone? That's what I want to see, Bob. What about you?
Absolutely. I'll go with the D-line. I'll get to after break. We're a little long for one. Wrap up, give her final thoughts. Mine will be in there as well. It's the Bobby Carpenter Show with my man Anthony Schlegel on the Big Play Network.
We're gonna be happily ever after. That's what I had.
All right, Schlegs, you gobbled up that last segment like you were at Waffle House. Like you were starving at Waffle House at 3 a.m. Had about 7 waffles down. I think the defensive line has the most to prove this year. I'm with you because of DBs. Everyone looks at the big plays at the end of last season.
Yeah.
But you have JT Tuimoloau out, Jack Sawyer. They're the number 1 and 2 ranked defensive ends coming out. Those guys have been good. Are they going to be able to take that step? Are they going to elevate and be incredibly dominant? And you throw in Kenyatta Jackson, who's played really good. He was a top 40 recruit. He's looked really elite. Both JT and Jack are bigger dudes, wide, thick, and they're really good against the run. You look at like pure pass rusher, Jackson might be that guy. So then you throw Mike Hall in the mix inside and how good he was. Can he stay healthy through the season? So I'm looking at that defensive line thinking, man, like these guys have a chance to be really, really special. And hopefully they can take that jump this year and be that team. So now it's like it is game week.
Yep.
We got a little bit of time left in the show. First game of the season, Saturday in Bloomington.
Yep.
What's this week like for the guys?
Weeks like, so, they probably had a walkthrough film today.
Sunday walkthrough.
Monday's off.
Yeah.
You're going to work out, right? So they probably lifted today. They might give it, some guys get a lift tomorrow, depending upon what they've done. And again, it also depends on the health coming out of camp because, they can do that right now. Then Tuesday, it's always a really hard practice. Wednesday, it's tapered down. Thursday, now you're like good, ones versus the threes, right? You're going scout team more look of what your game, the scout
script for
scripting.
success. Yeah,
Yep,
script for
exactly.
success. Good slump buster in there. Make you feel good.
Right.
Schlegs.
Friday, boom, go. You're gonna drive out to Bloomington on the bus. You're gonna make sure you get there. You're gonna eat. You're gonna sleep, and then Saturday you're gonna wake up. You're gonna play this game, championship water. Stay hydrated, and go out there and go do your job and have fun. Like just let it rip. That's what I want to see, Bob. Let it rip. But it's a good week. It's a good week, and they've had a week to prepare for this week. Meaning they've had an opportunity being in school to rep the routine to get. That's why they had a scrimmage this last weekend. That's what you do. You get in the routine so that this week you can go and you just play ball, versus Indiana.
And I love this. Ryan's been here now for a number of years, settled in. I think he has a routine about him. Like you mentioned, they played Minnesota to start the season a couple of years ago.
Yep.
They opened with Indiana. I believe that was Ryan's year as an assistant that he was here. So he's done this opening conference game. He's been through it all. There's obviously a lot that goes into it, but it feels like he's kind of developed his rhythm, his routine as a head coach. And now this is kind of the first true test that he's had to deal with as well, as far as handling a quarterback controversy in a battle that hasn't been resolved quickly heading in, coming out of training camp. So we'll see how he chooses to handle. I think Kyle McCord will be the guy that takes the first snaps. I think him and Devin Brown will both play a lot. I think they'll do a couple series here, a couple series there. And it wouldn't surprise me if he lets this thing play out all the way, Schlegs, heading up to maybe Notre Dame and doesn't really even call it, maybe the week before that. But I think he'll want to have it settled by then. But that is going to be obviously the eyes of Buckeye Nation and really college football on this as we look forward. So excited. Yep. Big week, going to be a great one. It's been a great show today, Schlegs.
Absolutely, buddy.
It's been a phenomenal one. Keep looking forward to it. The Bobby Carpenter Show, Schlegs on the Big Play Network.